Hello, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. And today I'm going to be covering a sword review, one I've already done, but this is kind of a little bit after the fact. Given I have more experience with the sword, I wanted to update that review. What I'm going to be reviewing today is the Chlebowski Dragazes Feder. And for the sake of comparison, I'm going to be comparing it to the Purple Heart Armory VB Feder. And the reason for that is that at my club, the VB is a very common and popular sword option. It's one of the cheaper sword options out there. And, you kind of want to know, at something that's a little under a $300 price point, what is something that's almost double that in terms of price and cost, and a little difficult with availability? What are you getting out of that? So for the record, this is slightly longer. It is predominantly longer in the blade. It is actually slightly shorter when it comes to the handle and pommel, by about an inch, but there is some benefits, and I will talk about the hilt a little bit later on. I don't want to talk about that blade because it does have the double fuller. And as I said, this has been my primary competition blade for the past few competitions I've done. I've managed to win medals with it, so I'm very happy with it. The double fuller means you have a lot thicker blade, and people have asked me, well, how does it stand up to dents and burring, etc.? The primary blade, you can see, obviously, at the fort, you might be able to see there is a little bit of blemishing that does come in because it has taken a fair amount of abuse. But I'd have to say that most of the burrs going along the blade are fairly easy to take out and usually don't really affect it. But because that fullering, the edge where the first fuller begins, that does tend to burr pretty heavily and can be a little bit of a pain. You may have to get your file to get some of those burrs out. But overall, the blade has actually held up fairly well. You can see it, I think, in the light there, some of this up here where it has taken some abuse. But still, when you're looking at it, it's really no different than any other blade, especially at the tip where you get a lot of hits that come in. One of the interesting things about this is because it does tend to feel a lot heavier. There's a lot more blade presence than some of the blades that we see on Feders where there is no fullering. It's just a flat piece of metal. This does give this a lot more blade presence. It makes it a little bit slower in comparison, but I also think that depends on how you are holding it, and I'll get to that when I get to the hilt itself. The shield is kind of interesting. So it does have a shield. It's not quite like a Siggy King or something. But unlike other shilts where it'll come out and you'll kind of see where the blade would just stop, I think the goal here with this particular shield is it is a ramp a la Dukes of Hazzard and the General Lee. So if a sword comes, it just rolls out here and comes and hits somewhere into the guard, which makes hand hits just from riding the blade a little more difficult because rather than stopping, or rather than kind of stopping and then coming back here, it just guides an opposing blade to go right out into the hilt itself. And the hilt has taken a fair amount of, I don't know how well you can see that, but there have been a lot of cuts, particularly in that area, because of that feature. Now, one of the other things to think about with, and I think this is true of most of the Chlebowski swords, is that this thing is peened together. There is no disassembly, and that's for all the parts. I talked about this in the first, and now that I'm moving a little bit more into the hilt and hilt assembly, the peen is actually so clean, it's very hard to spot, but you can kind of see that ridge line there where the peen occurs, and then they've stamped this all through into the pommel, which is really kind of cool that you're not visibly seeing the peen, but it is there, and it is held on very, very tightly. If I continue that, the actual, sometimes you'll hit swords and the guard will rattle. There's very little possibility of this with a the Chlebowski Dragazes because it is actually peened to the blade. So I don't know if you can see that little circle there. There's one on that side. Obviously, there's one on the other side. So both sides of the cross guard have actually been peened. That space is right over here. This has been peened. One peen is here, one peen is here. So the blade kind of comes through. They slide this up, and then they peen it in. So the likelihood of this ever coming loose is a non-issue. And even if it was, you could theoretically just take a hammer and peen it back to being in a locked position. But in the years that I've owned this, I've not had any problems. And this has been my primary fighting blade. Now, when it comes to the handle, it is a wasted handle, so you can see where that comes up. It does have kind of a riser that moves through some sort of a wire, probably underneath the leather. And then, as I said, it is wasted, and then it has this really nice pommel with the kind of fullered, just kind of a ball pommel here. And it's actually quite nice because when I hold that, especially with my gloves, because I want to get some space, it's very easy to grab that pommel, and that will affect your speed a lot more. If you do choose to use the waist and go a little higher, you may notice a little more slow. Your hands are going to be a little closer together, so you're not going to get that full hand space. Obviously, with HEMA gloves, even more so. I'm just wearing leather gloves right now. But here I do get that space. And it is good if I want to flip to certain positions. I can kind of rest that ball in the palm of my hand and move it about. So that will increase the speed rather than if I hold it really with the pommel here. I will notice that because of the blade weight, it's a little heavier and it does not move quite as fast. But when I do kind of use the pommel, and some manuals do tell us to do that, some don't. This one does really increase that speed when I can actually hold it by the pommel itself. And it does lend itself to doing that. Now, I should say that the edges of that fullering are kind of very sharp in terms of angle. So, can that lead to some wear in your gloves? Possibly. You could, in theory, try to sand that down, make it a little smoother. But overall, I have not had any problems with that. Also, this blade, in comparison to the VB Feder, about an inch shorter on the handle, but you trade that off, it's about 1.25 inches longer in terms of the blade. This is a very, very long sword, and sometimes, I not being the tallest person in the world, I really do appreciate that little bit of extra length for hand shots, deep targets, anything where you can get a little more advantage. I'm kind of a big fan of, and I think that is a useful thing. I will try to remember to put the specifics of the measurements for the Chlebowski Feder in the description below, but I don't want to drag this out too terribly much. The last thing is just the overall aesthetics, and I have to say that double fuller immediately stands out. Also, the twisted crossguard is another thing that when people look at that, they look at the schilt, they know this isn't something that everyone is going to have. So between that, the pommel, the wasted handle, these are all features that make this as a standout weapon within the HEMA world. Also, it is a little stiff. The wider blade is going to hit a little harder. So keep that in mind depending on what you are looking to get out of your weapon. This will not necessarily be the most nimble of weapons. It's not bad. I really do enjoy using it, but I do acknowledge if I do certain techniques with the VB Feder and I do them with this is going to just be a hair slower. And if you're really doing a high-level HEMA game, that little bit of slowness might make up all the difference. Sometimes when fighting people substantially larger, substantially stronger, having that little bit of extra strength in the blade helps me when I'm fighting. But I would understand someone who might have a more delicate frame, might not be as strong, might stay away from a blade like this and might go to something in the quote-unquote light category, or even just something like a VB Feder. But for me, I really do enjoy this. It is a standout piece. It does help me in my fighting style. So I would encourage it if that's what you are looking for. If you're looking for something light and nimble, probably not your first choice. And I believe the retail on this is about $625 US. So you do have a lot of other options when you're getting anywhere near this price point. Also, the Chlebowskis are relatively hard to find. They don't produce a whole lot of them, so a lot of websites will say they're either sold out. I would wait. If you go onto a website and you're looking for this, go ahead and sign up to their email, and then if they say they get some in stock, just make sure you're ready and purchase it then, because otherwise you may miss your window. But otherwise, it's a fun Feder. I really enjoy it. It has been my primary competition sword for a while. I am getting a new one, which I will talk about in a later video when that weapon comes in. It is not a Chlebowski, it's a different sword, and I'm going to keep that secret with me. But in the meantime, once again, I'm Ramirez. I'm with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based out of Norfolk, Virginia. I will leave information about our club below. And just as a little teaser, for those of you watching this in time, I am signed up for the Icebreaker tournament in Minneapolis, Minnesota for 2025 in May. If you are watching this video and you are going there, I would love to see you, say hi. I am going to be at the social event for that, so that'll be another place if you want to hang out, chat about some of the videos that I've done. All right, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.